My name is Dr. Gabriel. I'm a clinical neurologist here at UCSD. I see patients with memory complaints here in our memory disorders clinic, and I run clinical trials that strive to find a cure for some of the devastating illnesses that we often diagnose. My colleagues and I believe that participation in clinical trials is an essential part of care for patients with cognitive or memory difficulties, especially when the condition is the consequence of neurodegenerative processes such as Alzheimer's disease or a related disorder. By related disorders, we usually mean diseases like Lewy body dementia or frontotemporal lobar degeneration. All of us have been touched in some way or another by one of these diseases. There are currently no available treatments that address the underlying causes, and there will never be without clinical trials. Like cancer, the only way to find a cure and to help each and every one of our patients is to make sure that everyone who is eligible and willing to participate in a clinical trial is offered precisely that opportunity. Alzheimer's disease and related disorders are complicated, slowly progressive conditions that we believe start years, possibly decades, before there are any symptoms. Changes occur in the brain, and what we can do about them will be different at different stages of the disease. A treatment or trial that's appropriate for one patient may not be for another. For this reason, our collection of available trials aims to address the entire spectrum of disease. Trials also have a start and an end date. New trials exploring benefits of new medications or interventions are started every year. Participation in clinical trials does not generally entail changes in your routine medical care. Nearly all trials allow patients to remain on their usual medications, including medications that we consider standard of care. In Alzheimer's disease, for example, standard of care medications include donepezil or Aricept, rivastigmine or Exelon, galantamine or Razidine, and Namenda or memantine, medications that you've surely heard of. They also include most other medications that are used to treat mood or sleep. During nearly all clinical trials, you would in fact be encouraged to continue your medications as is. Clinical research means research in humans, usually patients, or sometimes people at risk of developing a particular disorder, for example, Alzheimer's disease. Here at UCSD, there are many types of clinical research. Perhaps the simplest way of thinking about this is to ask the question, does the research involve some kind of intervention, such as a new drug, or an intervention such as exercise? If the answer is yes, then we are talking about clinical trials. Other types of non-trial research include observational studies, such as our longitudinal study. This type of research usually involves following individuals in time, focusing on understanding and describing how the changes occur and why, as well as how to best measure these changes. Clinical trials, on the other hand, usually involve drugs. Drugs studied in clinical trials have already undergone rigorous so-called preclinical scientific study to predict safety and potential efficacy. The clinical trial process itself is designed to further confirm safety and effectiveness before the FDA will approve them for therapeutic use. This process can take decades for any given medication. Trials are generally divided into different phases. Very early so-called phase 1 trials aim to study new agents that have demonstrated safe, promising results in preclinical studies, that is, studies in animal models of disease. In phase 1 trials, the intervention under study is being given to humans for the very first time. So they are often called first-in-human trials. Such studies are generally short and involve small numbers of participants that are monitored very closely by the study team. They are frequently homegrown interventions that have been developed by scientists here at UCSD or by some of our close colleagues at other universities or in industry. Phase 1 studies are more often about establishing the safety of a particular intervention than about determining if the intervention will be effective or not, although there is always hope that a benefit will be seen. Phase 2 trials involve more participants, usually a few hundred, and more sites, not just UCSD. Phase 2 studies often have two goals. They aim to find the right dose of the medication and to demonstrate some degree of efficacy or impact on biological measures of disease severity, what we call biomarkers. These studies typically involve a placebo, that is a non-active pill that looks exactly like but does not contain the active ingredient being studied. Use of a placebo allows the study to be blinded. That means that neither the patient nor the treating team know if the participant is getting the active drug or not. Most trials have different groups of participants, some on placebo, some on one dose of the medication, and others on another dose. This means that in such a study, the chance of receiving placebo is reduced to 1 in 3. Many studies will, especially if the results are promising, offer an open-labeled extension after the blinded phase is completed. During this open-label phase, everyone receives the active treatment. This ensures that participants that initially receive placebo will also be given the opportunity to receive the active treatment before it becomes readily available on the market. Phase 3 trials are larger still. They involve thousands of patients and often multiple sites, often in different countries. Phase 3 trials are often called pivotal trials because they are a prerequisite for the FDA necessary for drug approval. They also involve a placebo and are intended to demonstrate that a particular drug is effective clinically. They aim to prove, at least as far as the FDA is concerned, that the agent impacts the disease in a meaningful way, such as slowing decline, stabilization, or even improvement of day-to-day function or quality of life. Trials will vary in length and frequency of visits. Although some can be as short as 6 months or so, most are at least a year or more. Some early stage trials can last up to 4 or even 5 years. As a potential participant in a trial, you are initially screened to see if you remain interested and meet the basic criteria for participation. These include age and being at the right stage of the disease. Then a more detailed history is obtained to make sure that the trial in question is right for you. If you qualify, that is, if you meet all inclusion criteria and don't have any of the exclusion criteria, then you can be randomized, that is to say, randomly and blindly assigned to a particular dose or placebo. Then you start the trial. We are always very diligent about making sure that you meet all inclusion criteria and none of the exclusion criteria, as these are designed for with your safety in mind. Some of you may think, I don't want to be in the group that gets the placebo. I always remind myself that we do not know if the agent in question will actually be effective or not. That's why there's a trial in the first place. The main reason I might want to participate in a clinical trial is not to get the drug, but mainly, simply, to participate and contribute to finding a cure. I like to think that being active in a clinical trial is really a form of prescribed therapy. Through this kind of participation, you interact with us, our research coordinators, and our active study personnel. Their role is to care for you and walk you through the process. Also, as noted earlier, trials that reveal potential benefits are often extended to an open label phase so that those originally on placebo can also have the opportunity to get the active treatment before it becomes more readily available to the public. Activities and benefits of participating in a clinical trial are in addition or as a supplement to your usual clinical care. Trials are not intended to replace your established provider. Participation in a clinical trial is also without any cost to you or your loved ones, and, in fact, many studies compensate individuals for their time and participation. Clinical trials are critical. Like the development of a vaccine, double-blind, placebo-controlled trials represent the gold standard in identifying effective and safe treatments for complex diseases. They are the only real gateway to new drug approvals and to find a cure. Finally, please remember that participation in a clinical trial remains completely optional and voluntary. You can withdraw from participation for any reason at any time. Remember also that although we encourage all of our patients who are able to participate do so, Choosing not to participate will not impact your relationship with your providers. Regardless of your decision, your providers will always continue to work with your best interest in mind and strive for the best possible outcomes for you, which could indeed include participation in a clinical trial. Thank you for your interest and for watching this video. I hope that this short presentation has been a useful introduction to clinical trials. If you live in Southern California and are interested in hearing more about our trials, please reach out to our UC San Diego team at clinicaltrialsadrc@ucsd.edu.